I had an experience where a former child reached out to me, wrote a letter, and said, thank you so much for the work that you did. Thank you for supporting me. And I mean, this was a child who really had bounced from group homes to foster homes and had some pretty challenging behaviors. But I mean, he really took the time to write that, and that was after we had stopped working together. And so I really didn't know exactly what had happened to him, but he took the time and wrote a letter. And so sometimes we don't, always see it right away. But there's been other children that I, have seen, what's become of them after the fact.
That's amazing.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Carmen Majid, and thank you so much for joining me for another segment of Conversations with Carmen. This afternoon, I am excited to be joined by my colleague, Dr. Jennifer Pruitt, licensed clinical psychologist. Thank you for joining me. I'm super excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. So let's dive a little bit into just your educational history and your professional history. You shared with me when we chatted a few days ago that you are the first in your family to not only attend college, but to graduate from college. So what can you tell me about that journey?
Yeah, so I was the first in my family to attend college, and I'm very proud of that accomplishment. My parents really encouraged attending college. They didn't have the opportunity to do so. So they really encouraged that growing up for myself and my siblings. I just happened to be the first one who decided that that was the path for me. We didn't have extended family who had attended college either. So, I mean, I was the first one to really decide, that was for me, and I was going to do it.
Absolutely.
And I think my parents' influence really helped that. I mean, from a young age, I loved school. I was a good student. I loved learning. And they really encouraged that it was possible. And so from a young age, elementary school even, I would have said, I'm going to college. That's what I'm going to do.
How wonderful.
And my parents really encouraged that. But I mean, it came with some challenges, right? I mean, if your parents have not attended, if you don't have family members who have attended, you have to learn to navigate really what the system is,
For sure.
right? So in high school, it was trying to figure out what that application process looked like, learn about financial aid, do some tours through school. I mean, I really sought out support from the college counselor at my high school. My parents helped with what they could, but they had never filled out a FAFSA. They had, never registered for school. They had never signed up for housing. So it was really trying to navigate the bigger system in addition to just then trying to adapt and adjust to college life, right?
Absolutely.
So when I got to USC, it was figuring out how that system worked and what supports were available, and seeking out other students who could relate to that experience as well. I think was helpful.
Absolutely. Now that's wonderful. And you actually just answered the next question I was going to throw out there, which was, was there ever a time, or were there times when the prospect of attending college, navigating the system, as you said, when it seemed not feasible? But I feel like you sort of spoke to that there were some inherent challenges along the way. What do you think it was about you that sort of maybe intrinsically, though, that provided the motivation as well? Because I know you spoke to the family support, the parental support, which is phenomenal. You spoke to your ability to be able to just, navigate a system and an unfamiliar system. But what intrinsically is there about you that just added that extra layer of support?
I love learning.
Yeah, you did say that. Yeah, okay.
I mean, I think you have to if you,
For sure.
Not only do undergrad, but you end up going to graduate level program. I really love learning. I loved being in the classroom. I do feel like support makes a difference. But it was something, and I just kind of knew I wanted it,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And,
Mhm.
you know, I was going to take the steps to get there, whether there were challenges or not. And
Right.
I think there is, you know, you kind
Yeah.
of come across moments where even sometimes you might even doubt
Exactly.
yourself and your own
Mhm.
ability
Mhm.
as you navigate being in class and
Mhm.
just even the social and the educational piece of
Mhm.
that is
Mhm.
sometimes hard for students. But
Right.
you know, I knew I really wanted it. I knew it was
Yeah.
important. And I feel really proud because I feel like
Hmm.
me finishing, I think the exposure and finishing school and me being the first
Mhm.
has really changed like a trajectory for my family in terms of now the next generations feeling like that's a option for
I
them
love it.
and it's feasible for
Yeah,
them, you know?
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I started exposing my niece, my goddaughter,
That's right.
to colleges at a young age.
Wonderful.
Taking her on a
That's
campus
great.
and showing her what a
That's
college
great.
campus looks like.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Mhm.
enforcing for her if she wanted that it was an option.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
there are other options out there, but if she
Yeah.
wanted it, it was an option.
Yeah, and it's achievable.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's wonderful. And I feel like that's a bit of a parallel process, you know, just in terms of talking about achieving a college education, you know, navigating a very, what can be at times an intimidating system. But then I feel like that's kind of parallel for a lot of people in terms of private practice, you know,
Mhm.
and can I achieve this? Is it a fit? Is it realistic? Will I fail? Will I thrive? So that just popped into my mind.
For
So,
sure. I
yeah.
think there's such an uncertainty, right?
Mhm.
And
Oh my
sometimes we
goodness, yeah.
think, well, maybe that's not for me, maybe that's for other people.
Exactly.
Or,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes the fear about leaving something that feels stable
Yes.
can
Yes.
sometimes hold us back,
Mhm.
you know, and,
sure.
you know, the journey to private practice meant taking some risk,
Absolutely.
right? Really
Yeah.
believing that it
Yeah.
was possible,
Mhm.
learning what steps to take, and
Mhm.
then really just saying, okay, I've got to take the risk and take the
Exactly.
leap because I think it's possible.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, for sure. And that question that I posed to you a few minutes ago about what was it intrinsically that, you know, served as motivation for you to push it forward no matter what, you know, what may have appeared to have been the situation. I think that that is a really wonderful question for anyone who's contemplating private practice and taking that leap of faith. Maybe being able to identify what is it about me specifically, what's unique to me that could be construed as an attribute or a personal strength or as a motivator. And then you go with that, you know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And what do you want?
What do you
What are
want?
you passionate
Exactly.
about?
Yeah.
What is meaningful for you?
Absolutely.
And what do you see for yourself?
For sure.
You know, like what do you envision for your future?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think private practice has created a ability for me to really feel like I could also balance
Yes.
you know, my passion for my work and my
Mhm.
career,
Mhm.
but also balance my family life.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that's what's been really valuable.
Yeah.
It was scary taking that risk, but it was well worth it.
Well worth it. Absolutely. Okay. Well, let's talk about your work history a little bit. So I know that you spent a number of years working as a foster care social worker. So I'm curious, did you enjoy that work? What was the nature of the work? And what did it show or reveal to you about you?
I spent several years working
Yeah.
as a foster care
Yeah.
social worker.
Mhm.
Really started in that job
Yeah.
right after I finished a master's program.
Mhm.
I want to say I got the job literally a month or two after.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
fast.
so I really started right away and
Okay.
I knew nothing about
Wow.
the foster care system.
Wow. Mhm.
Had no idea,
Yeah.
right? But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the work. It's challenging in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I definitely learned a lot about the foster care system and, you know, children's experience in the foster care system that I would have said I had no clue.
Absolutely.
You know, but it taught me a lot. I think I learned a lot about myself in that process in terms of just gaining confidence in my ability to like set boundaries with individuals. I learned, and I think I gained a lot of confidence, right, in myself. I think I really learned that I could build a rapport
Wow.
with anybody.
Nice.
including sometimes the toughest clients to build that
Absolutely.
rapport because they haven't been able to trust people
That's
or they
right.
don't trust anyone involved in the system.
That's right.
So I think I really gained a confidence about that.
Yeah.
It definitely introduced me to the impact that early childhood trauma can have.
Right. For sure.
So, I think I learned a lot from that experience. I enjoyed working with the kids.
That's
I enjoyed working with the caregivers.
Wonderful.
But it did have its challenges, and
Yeah.
it doesn't come without feeling like, it's a big system out there. And it's not a perfect system.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a flawed
Yeah.
system.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately. Yeah, it's a system that at times does fail the children and families as much as we might not want to admit that, but that's kind of that's part of the reality, but that's great. And how would you say that overarching experience perhaps prepared you to step into private practice? Any sort of
I think it just if we go back to the confidence, right? And knowing that, okay, I can I think build a rapport with anyone.
For sure.
I think that experience also teaches adaptability, flexibility.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I think those are also strengths that help me in my private practice.
Wonderful.
After that job, I just sort of segued into different roles within community mental health.
Sure.
But at that point, I felt like I had the foundation. And I think the experiences of work also benefited me when I went back for my doctorate. I had a real life work experience and real experience in the field.
For sure.
It wasn't just based off of what I was learning in the books, but I had really knowledge and experience that I felt was different maybe than some of my other colleagues in our cohort who didn't have that.
So wonderful. That's great. That's great. Any other particular work experience that stands out to you that you think really prepared you to be to become the professional who you are today, in addition to working as a foster care social worker?
Well, I think, in my doctorate program, we did a lot of practicum and internship clinical experiences. I feel like those really helped to create a solid foundation for me to feel like I could do therapy, I could do private practice.
Absolutely.
I had some great supervisors and mentors, and I feel like that really created a solid foundation for me to feel like I was confident in my own ability. So I think those were, and it was a variety of things, which I think also helped, right?
For sure.
I didn't feel like I had just one particular type of experience, but I felt like I had exposure to quite a few populations and clinical focus. So definitely. I think that really gave me a good foundation to feel like I could do private practice.
That's wonderful. No, that's really great. That's really great. Okay. I'm going to switch gears a little bit. Sure. I am curious about your experience as a mentor. And we talked a little bit about, I hope I pronounced this correctly, Latinas Juntas. I would love to know what that experience was about.
Okay. I did an internship, clinical experience at Cal State Dominguez Hills while I was in my doctoral program. And that was on the campus. My supervisor at the time, my clinical supervisor, Dr. Dena Sanchez, she and there was another female psychologist, Latina female psychologist as well there. They created the group and would every year put on an annual event for the college students there, targeting really Latinas, first generation to go to college, and really trying to connect the students with staff and professors and really connect them to those mentors on campus, but also provide the support, right? And it was meaningful. I mean, she included me and invited me to be a part of it. We attended the event and just provided on that day. It was a whole, part of a whole day, half day event. We did breakout sessions. We really got to know the students that attended on that day. and, talk about my own experiences,
Right.
talk about their experiences.
Yeah.
And I even went back once I graduated. She invited me back, and as a working psychologist in the field, went back and said, okay, students need to hear about that
Yeah.
and hear about the experience of,
Absolutely.
what it is to work in the field as well.
For sure. Oh, how wonderful.
Yeah.
And the fact that I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, but if there was, there might have been some moments where you could really relate to their plight or to their trajectory or to their experience. Would you say that positively impacted or informed your experience even more so, made it richer, I guess is what I'm wondering.
For sure. Yeah. And I feel like it made my experience richer, but theirs as well, right? I mean, when you're looking for that support and connection with someone who can relate to your experience,
Absolutely.
and not that it's identical, but just, I feel like I could relate to being that student on a campus who's like, okay, I'm trying to figure this out. I could relate to having parents who, really said, we want to support, we don't know how. I could relate to being that person who was trying to figure it out and who was seeking out that support,
Yeah, that's wonderful. No, it's almost like maybe like this dynamic of giving back, giving back and then at the same time planting seeds so that you're paying it forward, but I don't know, that just seems kind of
I think
cool
that's
to
important.
me. I love that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I feel like, you plant the seeds for continued growth in different ways. And I feel like that's one way,
Excellent.
is to really feel like I can give back and I can, help someone along the way.
Absolutely.
I think that's important.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is. Leave your imprint and know that you planted that seed. Just keep going. Kind of, again, another parallel experience with clients. Every client journey is different. Some we plant the seed and then, we work long enough with that individual to watch them thrive and flourish. Others, we plant the seed and then we, for whatever reason, part ways and we just know that we did a thing and we keep going, especially with kiddos, going back to kiddos in the foster care system, because I too have, pretty extensive experience working in that part of the industry. And unfortunately, whether it's they changed group homes or they were detained or whatever the case may be, I worked with them maybe 3 sessions, if that, and never saw them again, but had to really make peace with it. And one way of making peace with it was, listen, in those 3 sessions, I went in hard and I gave them everything I could, planted a seed. So same thing here. Yeah.
And sometimes you don't hear about it right away.
Exactly.
Sometimes you do. I had an experience where a former child reached out to me, wrote a letter and said, thank you so much for the work that you did. Thank you for supporting me. And I mean, this was a child who really had bounced from group homes to foster homes and had some pretty challenging behaviors. But I mean, he really took the time to write that. And that was after we had stopped working together. And so I really didn't know exactly what had happened to him. But he took the time and wrote a letter. And so sometimes we don't, always see it right away. But there's been other children that I, have seen, what's become of them after the fact.
That's amazing.
Some not so much. We don't get to hear all the time. But some I've seen how they've thrived and grown and,
I love it.
It's amazing.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's great. That's great. So I also know about you that you are like a mental health advocate. And I'm wondering, what can you tell me about that particular journey? What have you done around advocacy?
Sure. Part of, in the past, my work, I was part of a committee and that our focus was on bridging the gap, and also looking at destigmatizing mental health treatment, which we know is still a struggle in our society. We've seen some improvements. But, as part of that committee, then I stepped into a role as the chair of that committee and helped to organize an annual mental health awareness event during the month of May for Mental Health Awareness Month. And we put on that annual event, which brought together consumers of mental health, as well as providers in the community. We did a resource fair to help link clients in the
Great.
community to
Yeah.
resources, as well as like breakout sessions
Right.
where they got to learn about like coping skills. And there was also a breakout session where people who had navigated the mental health system shared their story of recovery and
Oh, wow.
their story through their treatment.
Wonderful.
I think it's meaningful, right?
Yeah.
It's work that we need to continue to do in our community.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, that sounds wonderful. Tell me a little bit about your practice. Who do you, which client population or populations do you mostly see? Who do you prefer to work with?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mostly see adults
Okay.
in my private practice now. I do see some adolescents and teens, and I enjoy that work.
Yeah.
Not so many kids anymore,
Okay.
just because of the timing of my hours
Sure.
of availability.
Yeah.
Doesn't quite line up exactly with,
Right.
young kids.
Right.
Although for those teens, I work a little later sometimes for those after school hours.
Absolutely.
So I primarily see adults,
Okay.
individuals. I do see some couples and some family.
Yeah.
I enjoy every client I work with.
Yeah.
And I do EMDR
was
as
about
well
to
in my
ask you about that.
practice,
Wonderful.
which that's provided,
Excellent. Yeah.
wonderful benefits to my practice. It really
Love it.
helps with, I think a lot of clients do have trauma.
Yeah.
Whether that be, smaller traumas, whether that be an extensive history of trauma. And that's really just helped in addition to I am trained in like TFCBT as well.
Right.
So the EMDR just really has helped my practice as well when
Absolutely.
I'm working with clients who have experienced trauma.
For sure. Well, that's wonderful. And for those viewers who aren't familiar with TFCBT, I know both of us know that it's an evidence-based practice, but what can you tell us about?
Yeah. I did a lot of TFCBT when I was working with community mental health and kids.
Okay.
It's trauma-focused CBT.
Yep.
So I did a lot of trauma narratives with kids
Wow.
during that time.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And it was super helpful. I think it was effective.
Yeah.
And I see that with the EMDR too.
Excellent.
Just the effectiveness is amazing,
That's
right?
great.
It adds a different dimension to your practice.
That's wonderful. Yeah. So that's wonderful feedback for anyone who's questioning whether they should, pursue EMDR training and certification, because I know a lot of people are curious, but some might be on the fence and just trying to figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great feedback.
Of course.
Okay, wonderful. So I know that in addition to maintaining a thriving practice, you also play a number of other important roles with us as well. You are, and let me know if I'm missing anything, but you are part of the CEU, Continuing Education Committee here. You are a clinical supervisor. I believe you provide both individual and group supervision.
Correct.
And you're also our provider support specialist for the Monrovia office.
Correct.
So how do you talk to me a little bit about each role? Do any of the roles overlap? And then how do you navigate the various roles? Because that's all very exciting.
Yeah. I love that I get to experience a variety of roles, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's one of the great things about our field as well.
Absolutely.
Is we can,
Yes,
have
we
a
do.
variety of different
Absolutely.
roles. I think they are meaningful in their own way. And I do think they are connected, right? I feel like at the core of it, I feel like I do work towards, helping people grow. Whether that be in my therapy practice, whether that be when I'm working with an associate therapist who's collecting hours towards their licensure.
For sure.
Maybe they're at the start of their career and just starting out, or maybe they're more experienced, but they're learning to grow in their own practice and grow as clinicians. I feel the provider success specialist role is meaningful in its own way as well. But I think it does go back to that growth as well. It's just helping people on their journey and helping them to find their path and to learn and grow in their own confidence and practice. And
Absolutely.
I think that's allowed me to really support other providers who want to do private practice, but who have maybe had those same doubts, like maybe this isn't for me, or can I really sustain a thriving practice that's going to pay my bills, right? I think our providers come sometimes with a lot of fear of that unknown, and I find it meaningful to say, I have the experience of being in that space before,
right.
And I can provide support in letting people know it's possible.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And I feel like we spoke to this a little bit earlier, but this is a question I'd love to ask everyone who I meet with. What, in this case, additional advice or guidance would you offer people who are either sitting on the fence in terms of, do I make the leap forward? And even for some of our colleagues who are already in the network, who are teetering back and forth, second guessing, almost like a buyer's remorse dynamic. Should I back out of this? Is this real? What advice would you give to people who might be in those spaces?
Trust yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
Absolutely.
You've got to trust yourself. You've got to tap into the strengths that you have.
Right.
Really look deep and reflect for those, right?
Yeah.
What is it that's holding you back?
Absolutely.
Really look at the strengths you can provide, and you've got to believe in those things,
for
right?
Sure.
You believe that you bring something valuable. You believe that you bring those strengths. And you believe that that's going to bring something valuable to the community that you're going to work with.
For sure.
But you got to believe in yourself.
You have to believe in yourself.
Trust and faith.
Absolutely. That trust, that faith, that sense of self-efficacy. And I think that goes back to me mentioning earlier, just really trying to drill down on what is unique about me. What do I genuinely consider my gifts to be? And people would be so fortunate to sit in the room with me and to, learn and be supported and,
Right.
So, yeah.
And that it's okay to still be learning.
Of course.
Right? Like it's okay to ask people for support. It's okay to ask questions.
Absolutely.
And that you're still learning. And I believe that. Like in our life, we should always be learning. In our practice, we should always be open to learning, right? We're never going to know it all.
Right.
It's not designed that way.
Well, that's true. Yeah. We're never going to, right. Exactly. So that might speak to people challenging themselves to shift the narrative a bit. And when you shift that narrative, the expectations shift as well, knowing that I'm always going to be a wonderful, fabulous work in progress, but I can level up, at the same time. So, okay, great. What does self-care look like to you?
Self-care looks like a lot of family time, time with friends. I really enjoy traveling. So when we get an opportunity to do that, that's something we really enjoy. I like to read. I like to bake.
Excellent.
I get my daughter involved in that too. So we bake some goodies. I like to try new cooking recipes, although cooking's not my favorite thing, but I do like to try new recipes. And kind of like, can I do this?
Right.
I think I can do this.
See what'll happen.
Yeah. So I like to cook, bake. I like to watch movies and musicals.
Wonderful.
And our family likes to watch college football.
Oh, excellent. I
so
love
probably people will be surprised by that.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we like to watch college football and travel and just hang out with family and friends.
Wonderful.
And
If someone was wondering, if someone, an endeavoring private practitioner was wondering whether to explore becoming affiliated with the Soul Tenders Network versus another network, what would you say to that individual? What's so special about us?
Oh, Soul Tenders is such a special place and unique, right? I think one of the things you'll recognize as different is the level of support and community you'll feel.
Yes.
That's huge, right? Especially when you're trying to navigate a entirely different role and some unknown changes for you. Just having that support. I mean, the colleagues that you get to work with.
Absolutely.
The support that's there from admin. I think that's extremely unique, right? And we do have such a level of autonomy.
Yes.
That I think is really important for providers, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, some of us may come from, other experiences where there was a lot of oversight, even micromanaging. You know, here you get to choose, you know,
Yeah.
your hours, what works
Absolutely.
for you.
For sure.
You get to have that flexibility, and so you have the autonomy
That's right.
while also having, I think, a good balance of that support that's
Yeah.
necessary.
Absolutely.
I think that's what's really unique.
I love it. I love it. And we're just, you know, people are more than just independent contractors. You are a business owner. You have a private practice, you know, so it is, I think I said this in my last segment, you know, it's really about embracing that mindset. You
It's
know,
a different shift.
It's a different
in thinking.
shift.
Yes,
Absolutely.
right?
I love it.
It's your practice,
Yeah,
you know, and that's really yours.
Yeah. That's right.
To nurture that, but you also get the support in nurturing that.
That's right. Absolutely.
Right,
So the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely the best of both worlds. Well, is there anything else that you would like us to know about you? Anything else to share? Any random, anything, trivia fact, fun fact? I don't know.
Facts. I don't know.
I don't want to put you on the spot. It's okay if you don't.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I think we shared a lot today.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
think this was wonderful. Yeah, I feel like I know you that much more. All right. Well, for anyone who might be curious about just anything that we've spoken about, anyone who wants to follow up with you, because like I said, we have a vast array of viewers, people who are our colleagues, who are our prospective colleagues,
Sure.
prospective clients, people who just want to know. I know that they would like to probably reach out and email you. So what is the best email address to reach you?
Okay, my email address is jpruitt, that's PRUITT.IC @soultenders.com. And then my number where I can be reached is 626-737-1093. And as Carmen mentioned earlier in the segment, I'm located out of the Monrovia location.
Wonderful. Excellent. Wonderful, wonderful. All right. And for anyone who might have any questions for me specifically, as always, you can reach me via email. That's cmajid.ip@soultenders.com. That's cmajid.ip@soultenders.com. And if you have questions about the provider spotlight process or the conversations with Carmen process, feel free to reach out to our provider relations department. And I believe their email address is providerrelations@soultenders.com. Again, Dr. Jennifer Pruitt, thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed this connection with you, and it was a delight to find out more about you. And thank you for being so transparent and willing to meet me in the middle
Thank you
here.
for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll say the process felt painless. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. I told you you'd be just fine. Thank you, everybody. I will catch you next time. Take care.